Well, hello, everybody. Welcome again. Joining me is Melissa, the Modern Mortician, out in the Oregon, Washington. What do you call it there? What'd you call it?
Pacific Northwest.
Pacific Northwest, an area of the country I have never traveled to and need to, I think, because that would be super fun. So today we're talking about something else, which is all in Melissa's wheelhouse, and that is home burials. You guys have kind of upticked on the questions of, can I bury somebody at home? What do we need to do with this? Have you ever done this, Kari? What are the laws? Laws are different everywhere, so we can't tell you the specific laws every single place. We can give you some good information. Melissa especially can give you good information because burial in green burials and simple burials and things like that are totally her wheelhouse. So talk to us a little about burial at home.
Burial at home is legal in 47 of 50 states. Washington is not one of them, yet here I am. But just like with anything, it takes planning. You can't just go, oh, Pop's dead, go dig a hole in the backyard. It doesn't work like that because there are laws that are in place for the public's protection, for just everybody. You don't want somebody sitting around unattended to for a month while people dig a hole in the backyard. There are rules for reasons. So with planning, you can have a home burial if you live in the kind of property that would allot for that. Living in the city limits is not going to happen unless you're already living in a cemetery. Designating a cemetery inside of the city limits, not going to happen. But outside of the city limits, more likely to happen. Non-incorporated areas, more likely to happen. It just takes talking and time and doing a little research.
Well, and that's what I found in Michigan was it's kind of a blanketed no, but you can ask and you can, but it was like up to, it has to be at least an acre designated where this burial would take place, and you would have to go to your township or your board. I mean, a lot of people don't even realize burying your cat in your backyard is illegal in many, many places, but yeah, people don't check and they do it. So, but the big thing is just going out and burying your backyard for a human. You do still have to have a funeral director involved in many, many states. And that's where some people, I think, just want to take grandma and put her in the backyard without like anything. And can you imagine if people did that? Like just the social security scamming and the deaths. Oh my gosh, like, oh, that would be insane. That's why there's laws and tracking, guys. There's gotta be, because there's too many naughty people doing naughty things. But yeah, so the big question I think is, how is that facilitated? What are we doing to kind of go bury in the backyard? Are we bringing vaults into the backyard? Can you give us a little breakdown on what you have experienced?
Well, I've seen a vault brought onto private property before, back in Texas. It was private land that they had a family cemetery established on from the 1800s. And Mama was afraid of water. And she was convinced that there was going to get water in her casket somehow. She was convinced, even though there's not a water table anywhere near this part of Texas. She wanted a vault, so she got a vault, and they drove it with the truck or whatever had to drive it in, and they had to use the backhoe to get it off and everything like that. But it can be done. You just have to have access. One other thing to think about is easement. Something in Texas and probably many other states is if you're going to establish a cemetery, what if you sell that property later, or your neighbors sell their property and people can't access the cemetery anymore? That can't happen. So they have to always have an access, an easement, a way to get there. Because if those property lines change over time and that gets cut off, that's bad. Yeah, so it's definitely something to think about. And again, you don't want to wait until, they're on hospice care to make these plans. If you own property and you say, even jokingly, I want to be buried here someday, start doing your research. And the best thing to do is start with the tax assessor collector's office or with the county maps, different things like that. Find out if you are in an area that will allow for that.
Well, and I think like here, I know reading through real estate things, like getting real estate licensing, one of the big things to learn was here in Michigan, and it's probably the same way, is your title of your property is going to have, in my mind, it's a big red stamp that says human body that goes on the front page. Like that's in my mind when I'm picturing. I know that's not it, but you have to declare that there is a human body buried on your property. Whether you actually create a cemetery or whether there's just, you know, where they're at, you have to declare and have mapped out where that person is buried on your property. Because imagine next person comes in that owns that property, they go to dig something or go to put up something and have to dig down the ground, you find bones. Well, then we've got like forensic anthropologists coming in trying to figure out if this is human. Then once they do, who is this and were they murdered and was this an illegal burial, and or these really old bones, and we need to, you know, so it brings up a lot of questions. You have to have that tracking along the way for it. Now, home burial, I think often is home funeral thinking as well, that you're going to keep somebody at home, maybe more natural. You know, what are some of the things to consider when it comes to that part of it?
Don't use dry ice. That was a bad idea. It's hard to get a hold of. It hurts. It's dangerous if not used properly. So with the invention of technology, we also have an abundance of gel packs in our neighborhoods, and you can get on your Facebook group or your next door group or anywhere and be like, I need gel packs, and get them pretty quick. So you don't have to have as much planning ready for that. I think they do have to be frozen, so that much planning, but I highly recommend frozen gel packs. If you don't have frozen gel packs, go get some frozen peas. I mean, don't eat them later, but I mean, eat them later if you want to. I know it's your thing. They had a bag, whatever. But yeah, be prepared. Have dry towels. That's another thing. Is that when you are dealing with cold, and you're going to deal with condensation, which means you're going to get moisture on the body, and that's new. So you want to have those gel packs wrapped in little cup towels or hand towels or something. You don't want a big old giant body towel, because then it's just a mess. You want it like nice hand towels, washcloths, something like that.
Yes.
I've had these interesting conversations with, I want to call them meatheads in my Instagram, because their Instagram pictures are like this, and they're like, what do you do when the body is leaking all over the floor? And I'm like, how often does this happen to you? Like, where are you working? So it's like, I over explain now. So you keep the body dry. And it's not that hard. You don't have to have like an abundance of supplies sitting around, just a little bit, just enough to change them out. For positioning, again, I'd say one gel pack between the thighs, one at the small of the back, maybe one at the shoulder blades, and maybe one on the abdomen or chest. If you have little ones, maybe underneath the armpits. It depends on how big your person was. Mass as to how much cold you feel like you're going to need.
Okay.
Another thing would be to get the mouth into position soon after death. And something that I recently posted about was using a catheter band to close the mouth. And some people lost it in the comments there too, assuming that I'm embalming people with this on and leaving a dent in their face. And I'm like, do you know who I am? I don't embalm anymore. So we're not leaving that on their face. So no, if you just position it, and then you can like tuck the hair around. I'm looking for my catheter band right now because I just moved a bunch of stuff.
Excitement over a catheter band. Woohoo!
Exactly. So,
I mean, or like it's kind of like a tourniquet of any kind.
Like, you have hair, you're not going to see it. It's like, we're magicians, like we're really good at hiding things. So I don't understand why this is so hard to hide. And it doesn't have to stay on the whole time. Another thing I was looking, they have those metal things that sit on the neck and just hold the mouth shut. That would be even more inconspicuous, I guess, if you wanted to. So those are available too. Just positioning the mouth is important. Another thing people can use is just roll up a washcloth. You don't have to buy all this stuff ahead of time. You can find everything you need in your house
Right.
for the hospital room. As far as closing the eyes, I found sometimes a little moisturizer helps. Not to get it on the eyelid or the actual eyes, but like when you actually moisturize the tissues around the eyes, it helps them stay closed. So you always have that little bit that's going to open up. That's just natural. And we have to, if we are giving people a natural goodbye, those of us that have been trained as embalmers to have everything so closed and so tight have to let go of that, because it's not going to be that way. And it is okay. So a little bit of eye peekage is okay, but honestly, 80% of the time, if I address it quickly enough and I'm gentle enough with it, they stay closed. And I haven't had to use anything crazy like coins or sandbags or anything.
Well, and Vaseline is a great lock. You know, like just putting a little Vaseline to hold the lid and the top lid, lower lid closed. It does, it like seals them right up. It keeps that moisture out, because the eyes are going to open as they dehydrate.
Mm-hmm.
So if you keep them sealed naturally, you know, I guess, I don't know how natural Vaseline is to some people.
Way better than glue.
So it's going to work to keep that air from circulating under the eye, which it's like, how much air is really getting up there? It just takes a little bit to dry that eye right out. So, no, I think those are great ideas. And laying somebody out in your bed, you can put them in the casket, in a wicker casket. If you're wanting to use a regular casket, so be it. You know, it's, I was just talking in another video about space is going to be your big thing sometimes in homes, is if you want a regular casket, a lot of homes are not built to bring a regular casket into those doors. We can barely get cots in, let alone a casket. Even a wicker casket, unless you stand it up sometimes, just like a cot, is not going to make some of the turns in the house. So you may have to carry the person in, carry the casket in different ways, and then, you know, place them in it, or however you want to set up. Different ways to do it.
Mm-hmm. I haven't, thankfully, I haven't had too much problem with navigating caskets into homes yet. But I will say, in one that we thought it was going to be an issue, the person stayed in their bed. We kept one of those hospice pads underneath them in case they did have any leaking. So that way we could monitor it and change it if we needed to. They stayed in their bed for a full 24 hours afterwards. And then the family carried them outside to the patio where they casketed them. So, yeah.
And then did they bury in their yard?
They actually, we processed to a cemetery for that one.
Nice.
That was a panic funeral.
We just got our first like green burial certified cemetery in my area. And the Jewish cemetery even just passed that they don't have to use vaults. So if that tells you kind of how backwards we are here in terms of, you know, getting to where everyone else is out on the coast and stuff, it's pretty archaic in some ways when it comes to that. I mean, the one green burial cemetery that called themselves Green Burial wouldn't do shrouds and stuff. He's like, nope, we'll only do cardboard boxes because that's what we're comfortable handling. I'm like, that's not green burial. There's nothing green about a cardboard box. It takes a very, very, very long time for a cardboard box to break down. I was like, this is not okay. He's like, well, that's what we're comfortable using. I'm like, well, that's stupid. Sorry, but it's stupid. So there's not a lot of exposure to a lot of that here, just because it's, you know, so different. But like you said, I think planning is the big key. My cousin wants to just do butter dishing, which is where you take the vault, tip it upside down, so you're at least in contact with the soil, but yet the cemetery can still be happy about the vault. But to do that, I'm like, do it now. Go to your board now. Go to your township board and say, this is what I want to do. Can you give me the stamp of approval? So that way when the time comes, we're good to go. So that's the biggest, like Melissa said, planning ahead, getting permission ahead. So when it comes time, you're not on hold for an extended period of time, hoping you can get someone's wishes fulfilled. And I get it that, you know, accidents happen and unplanned deaths. But if you know that's what you want, even if you're perfectly healthy right now, make the motion and get it in place. So that way, when the time comes, you're not scurrying and your family doesn't, out of haste, say, you know what, we're just going to go with burial here, blah, blah, blah. We're not going to do what they wanted because we can't. It's not worth it. Because that maneuvering through those hoops can sometimes be too much, especially in that loss moment, in the grief moment. So don't have both of those happening at once.
There's a story that this reminded me of that happened a couple of years ago, either in California or Texas. And I just remember how stunned I was that a man waits till mom's dead and, oh, she wanted a green burial on her property. Well, she's in the care of an SCI firm and they're like, per day refrigeration. She was in refrigeration for 6 months until this cemetery was legal and established. And he paid every penny of it.
Oh my gosh.
Sure, you didn't have to do that.
Wow.
Mom wanted a green burial, so why did you wait?
And was she like 98 or something? As if, you know, that's, I always say, I think it's so fascinating to me because, and I always share a story. There was a guy and his mom was like 103 when she died or whatever it was. She was over 100. And it was like, so what are you thinking for services for your mom? I don't know. We just haven't thought about it. It's like, your mom has been on, you know, borrowed time since she turned 80 about. Like, it's reality that this is coming, people, once you, especially once you hit 80, like definitely think about these things, if not long time before. But that's why I say that is he probably knew this was coming for a long time. She was probably super, super old. And then it was like, oh, well, now we'll think about it.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
Odd things. Well, thank you for chatting about a little about home burial and home funerals and things and sharing your experiences, which are far greater than mine here. And I like to learn about all these things because at some point it's going to start happening more and more here as we're dealing with, you know, the baby boom generation is happening and it's kind of like they want it their way and want it unique and different. And so different things are being thrown at us during, you know, this time of the next generation going. So it's good to stay on top of the options.
Yeah. And having an unembalmed body for a viewing at home is not scary for those that have not experienced it before. It's actually so moving and so peaceful. Just like any other professional, you are prepared for accidents, but I will tell you 9 times out of 10, nothing ever happened.
Yeah. Well, and I think we're in such a society that we do have that direct disposition where take grandma, cremate her. I never want to see her again. I never want to do anything. I don't want to be hands-on. I don't want to do anything with her. Yeah. But then you do have this other side that wants to be super hands-on and take care of their loved one and bathe them and clothe them and keep them at home. And so we have to be prepared for all of those things.
We are the professionals.
Yes.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Well, thank you for joining me for the conversation. And if there's a disposition that you want us to chat about that we haven't covered yet, I know more and more variations on things are starting to pop up and ideas that are out there that maybe you think, what about this? Throw them at us and we can discuss them. Thank you guys. Make sure to check out Melissa, the Modern Mortician, on all of the social media platforms and at her website, themodernmortician.com, and shoot her emails if you have questions. Thank you.
Thanks.
Bye, guys.